92.7.
It's midday. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the news here on 3FM 92.7. We're coming to you live from our studio at Adesawe Kanda here in Accra, also live on our numerous affiliates across the country. Around the world, we're streaming live on 3news.com. Download the tuning app from the Google Play or Apple iOS store and listen to us on the go. Coming up this afternoon, Parliament set to debate controversial bill on promotion of proper human sexual rights. Amnesty International, meanwhile, is accusing the legislature of denying civil society groups access to details of the final bill tabled for consideration. We're live to Parliament, where the clergy and religious leaders have taken over the gallery of the chamber. Also this afternoon, anti-corruption group Crusaders Against Corruption demand proactiveness from the special prosecutor Kisie Jabe in the execution of his mandate following the release of the half-year report, with still no convictions yet. And much later, no government response to food suppliers despite passing the night at the premises of the National Food Buffer Stock Company over 200 million cedis plus debt owed them. We're live there as the suppliers strengthen their resolve not to leave. Pleasure that you could be a part of this afternoon's bulletin. It's streaming live on Facebook. Our handles 3FM 927. Same handles on Twitter as well, 3FM 927. I am Eric Mawina Egbeta. We're starting off from Parliament because the anti-LGBTQ plus bill is currently before the House and is expected to take center stage this week as the House prepares to debate the controversial piece of legislation. The bill on the promotion of proper human sexual rights and family values prescribes lesbian, gay, bisexual care and related activities. It recommends punitive measures against such acts or their promotion, while providing for the protection and support for children and persons who are victims of the practice. The bill has generated a lot of interest from different sections of the Ghanaian populace and the international community at large, but the House is considering nonetheless the bill. Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Komla Kluchi is joining us with the latest, because we know as well that 2 lawsuits have been filed against the application or the processes in Parliament in relation to this bill. Komla, many thanks. Talk to us. Do we know if the debate has started on the bill?
Well, the debate will be starting shortly. There's indication from the Speaker that the report of the committee will go ahead, and that after it, then the debate would continue. The members of the clergy or the religious bodies, representatives of the religious bodies, which include the Christian community and then the Muslim community and a few of the traditional authorities are also here in support of this all-important bill that is before the House. And so in the next few minutes, the Speaker has indicated that that's going to happen. What's currently going on is the correction of the vote and proceedings for yesterday that James Echikwesen was sworn in.
And the indication we get is that the clergy, religious leaders have taken over the public gallery of Parliament. Talk to us about that and the high-power delegation, it seems, that is present in the House for this debate.
Well, the public gallery has been inundated with men of the gospel, and like I did say, it's not just them. I mean, they've been here very early in the morning. When I got here somewhere around 9 a.m., they had already filled up the public gallery, which indicates that yes, indeed, the anti-LGBTQ bill will be considered, and it's also been listed on the order paper. And so today, in full swing, it is going to happen with the Speaker himself sitting in the chair and also giving the indication that that all-important bill must at all costs commence today.
Just finally on the concerns over the lawsuits, does it look like it would come up in the debate process?
Well, as we speak, there is no indication that the speaker will be budging, on that one. And even as of yesterday, there was some indication of some injunction of the sort being placed on the legislature, barring them from going on with this particular bill. But it does appear from the body language of the speaker and his commentary since he assumed the chair this morning, it's indicative of the fact that the speaker may not be given that particular lawsuit in a scheme of the sort. It's just that he's going to go ahead and have the report taken, and then the debate also continue.
Right then, that's Komla Kluche. He's a parliamentary affairs correspondent. But away from Parliament, human rights groups, they continue to express reservations about the bill amidst calls for its rejection. Country Director of Amnesty International, Genevieve Partington, she's joined us on the telephone line with a bit more details as to the latest concerns. Many thanks, madam, for speaking to us. And so we've just been hearing from parliamentary affairs correspondent who says that it all appears that Parliament will begin to take the debates today. For you, as Amnesty International, what still continues to be the reservation you have in relation to this bill?
Yes, thank you for this platform. So, first of all, the reservation is there shouldn't be any bill at all, because the whole bill still criminalizes human beings that do not cause any harm to society. And this fact is based on the international human rights law already. So, again, Ghana is a secular state. We're not a Christian nation. If we were, then maybe they have the right to raise certain points or bills. So my question sometimes is, you have to, before you criminalize something, you have to establish the criminality of it. So how do you establish criminality of a person that is not causing harm to society? How does a person from the LGBTI community, how are they causing harm to the society? And how do you consider this as criminal? And I feel like, when you look at the amendments to the bill, they say due to popularity that Ghanaians want this bill passed. We don't pass bills because of popularity. We pass bills because based on the human rights, the international human rights law, and we pass bills while respecting everyone's human rights. And when I say everyone, including regardless of your age, sex, sexual orientation. So it's not because of popularity that we should be passing a bill or even consider it. But I think we have a lot of work to do. And in the current amendment, mind you, it still prohibits you being an ally of the community. It's stated there boldly. So what exactly is the definition of being an ally of the LGBTI community? I don't think this bill needs to be even spent. There shouldn't be any time spent on it, even debating in Parliament. Maybe it's good for people to be more educated so that, there's not so much ignorance about the LGBTI community and human rights in general.
But so you submitted a memoranda when the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee opened it up for contribution. Is it the case is it the case that you feel that you couldn't still provide that needed education to these members of Parliament and the proponents of the bill?
At the end of the day, people are entitled to their opinions, right? But at the end of the day, we have to see if it is even constitutionally legal to establish such a bill when we follow international human rights principles. And once we are even considering to be a member of a UN Human Rights Council, because I know Ghana is considering being a member in October, they are going to be voted for. And if we are considering being part of such a human rights council, then we should uphold human rights values for everyone, and that includes the LGBTI community. Thank you.
Right then, Genevieve, I appreciate that you could speak to us this afternoon. That's Genevieve Partington. She is Country Director of Amnesty International. It's a conversation that's not going to go away and will continue to, as and when needed, get as much opinion on this as the debate continues. But we're taking you away from Parliament at this time to the premises of the Buffer Stock Company Limited.
It's not our last resort.
And the wailings of one of the suppliers of the food buffer stock, the National Food Buffer Stock Company, who passed the night at the premises of the company, and they are yet to receive any responses from government over their demand to have some 200 million cedis plus debt owed them paid. The suppliers would come from different parts of the country, besieged the premises yesterday to drum home their demands, but accordingly, efforts have so far been unsuccessful. Speaking to Alfred Akansi on Ghana Tonight, spokesperson of the suppliers, Kokua Medume, accused the Buffer Stock Company of contracting private individuals to replace them while refusing to pay monies owed them.
The 90% represents, the supplies are in badges. And we, according to the minister, he had released 13 badges to the CEO. The amount that we're owing, he had released 13 badges, which represent 90%.
That's about 270 million.
Exactly. So the buffer stock, yes. So we confronted him with this new development, and he admitted that, in fact, there was such money disbursed to him. But unfortunately, they had loans on their books, and so they had used part of our money to defray.
So the money that the Education Minister, Dr. Yawase Dutum, told you,
yes,
that 270 million has
yes,
been released to
yes,
Buffer Stock,
yes,
to pay you your money.
Yes.
The Buffer Stock CEO told you that they've used that money to pay their debt.
Part of that money to pay their debt. And then the few that they left out, that they were supposed to disperse, they adopted a very cruel, arbitrary, and capricious model of distribution.
What do you mean?
They gave some 80%, they gave some 20%, they gave some 100%, and that money was exhausted. When they finally got money, because we've been tormenting them to have our money paid to us, they have decided to contract different set of people who are their cronies, friends, relatives, to engage in the supply of our business when they still have our money with them.
Kokua Medume is a spokesperson of the food suppliers. My colleague George Queenin, he's at the Buffer Stock Company. Let's touch base with him and get thoughts. George, many thanks for joining us. So they passed the night there. Any response from the government or the Buffer Stock Company so far?
Okay, so yesterday when they said they were going to spend the night here, I thought it was just a word of mouth, but truly they didn't go against their word. They slept here, cooked yam and added it to their shuttle, but it was very difficult for them to take their shower. They couldn't, access the restrooms here. And so as it stands now, none of the members that are picketing have taken their bath. And for them, they're going to do this until their monies are paid them. Yesterday, I spoke to J.K. Asa, who is the PRO of the Buffer Stock, and he made me aware that they are currently in training in Kumasi with the World Food Program. If that is anything to go by, it means that maybe they'll be hearing response or commitment from the CEO on Friday or hopefully on Monday when they return from the training. Eric.
But for these suppliers, no word at all from them.
Can you come again, please?
I'm asking if they've communicated this to the suppliers who are picketing at their premises.
Not at all. No, there's not been any engagement with them. This is just an engagement I had with the PR. This has not been relayed to the members.
You've been interacting with some of the suppliers who passed the night there.
Yes.
One of them, what did she tell you when you spoke to her?
So what she told me was sleeping in the open cannot be compared to the torture and the trauma she's going through, because creditors are pursuing her each and every day. She can't even sleep in her house. And it's quite sad if you ask me. It's very emotional here. And she's owed, government is supposed to pay her some 60 billion cedis. That's owed 60 billion cedis. And as at February this year, she was given 100,000 out of that money. And it cannot even do anything. It cannot even settle her creditors. It's a very worrying situation, she tells me.
I'm just a moody agro. I'm dying. Let me say some of that day. One say like it will like in silver time be.
TV station Ben I got
TV3.
So what you come from?
But which one country?
Mama, don't you go?
I'm doing my million 10 million. Oh, then
Maybe about public would be trouble.
But they don't even know.
So that's George Quinn in that interaction. He was on the telephone lines with us a short while ago. Let's just hear from the spokesperson of the suppliers again, who say that the whole resort to the law court should push come to shove.
There are different avenues available, but as we speak now, this is what we can afford. We want to exhaust a process before we move to the other. And our money has been locked up for 2 years, so we are managing our costs. So we think this will be the best option for us for now. But going forward, we might be consulting for any legal actions. But now, this is what we have.
That's the PRO, or the spokesperson of the food suppliers, Kokwa Medume. Let's just hear briefly as well from the ranking on the Education Committee of Parliament, Peter Nochukutoi, who's been reacting to the development.
If the suppliers are not paid, there will be serious food shortages in our schools. So I think there was a question by the Deputy Ranking on Education, Dr. Apak, on the finances of the free SHS program. And the answers were not conclusive. So it's good we have raised this issue. Tomorrow, I think in our discussions again, we will raise the matter on their behalf, because the school calendar must be complete.
Peter Nochukoto is a ranking on the Education Committee of Parliament. And away from this now, anti-corruption group Crusaders Against Corruption, they are demanding proactiveness from the Special Prosecutor Kisie Jabe in the execution of his mandate following the release of his half-year report. According to that report, 4 investigations into very high-profile cases have concluded, with 150 other pending investigations, but there's been no convictions. And this, according to the Crusaders Against Corruption, points to the OSP having a long way to go in making an impact in the corruption fight in Ghana. Emmanuel Wilson Jr., Chief Crusader, has joined us on the telephone lines with a bit more. Many thanks, sir, for speaking to us. What is informing your position that there needs to be proactiveness and that the OSP has a long way to go in terms of making an impact in the fight against corruption?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, if we want to fight corruption, the best approach is for you to prevent it. So in other words, you put in measures that will prevent the occurrence of corruption, other than waiting for corruption to occur and then you come in to fight it. And so the best thing is for you to be proactive other than being reactive. And there are empirical records and reasons and proofs to show this, that in jurisdictions where they've been able to fight corruption to its barest minimum, they have always used a proactive approach other than a reactive approach. Unfortunately, it looks like the special prosecutor over the past period and recently releasing its report and studying it suggests clearly that our position in the past has not changed, which is we proposing to the special prosecutor to change his style of trying to fight corruption in Ghana. If you consider the report, it is clear that all the things that have been mentioned in the report, the special prosecutor decided to use the reactive approach instead of the proactive approach. What is disappointing to us is that this past period, the report has still failed to even capture to us significantly the contribution that the special prosecutor has been able to do in time past, which has reduced corruption or has made an impact in line with fighting corruption or protecting the public purse. The whole report, when you read it, does not give a clue as to trying to quantify how much we have gone or we have done in terms of fighting corruption. The other thing about the report, which to us is so surprising, is that if you look at Ghana's problem when it comes to fighting corruption or when it comes to corruption, one of the major things which seems to be becoming a norm now, in other words, we are rather normalizing the criminality, has to do with vote buying. And in the report, conspicuously missing was any issue that has to do with vote buying, where in past recent times there are significant evidence to prove clearly that there has been a crime committed which has to do with vote buying. And vote buying, not only is it a corruption, but it is a crime. It offends the provisions in section 240 and 241 of the Criminal Code 1960. There are examples to show when the MCs, DCs were going to be approved, when the MPP had its internal elections, even when the NDC had its parliamentary elections. There are evidence to show that they were vote buying. But strangely, the special prosecutor failed to even see it as an interest for him to pursue it or for it to even find space in its report.
So for you, there are quite a number of gray areas from the report. You feel that enough is not being done. There are those who've made the argument about conclusion in investigations on matters relating to Charles Edubuahi as well. I mean, there are those who make the argument that he should have stated emphatically what the next line of action is rather than leave it quite as ambiguous as he did.
That is why, if you look at the release, in our concluding part, we said that honestly assessing the report that has come, this document from the Special Prosecutor's Office actually falls short of it being qualified as a report because it doesn't contain even what it needs to contain for us to do a clear assessment. Because the reason for this release was for the Special Prosecutor to convince the public to have trust in their working. But unfortunately, this release, which has to do with the report from the Office of the Special Prosecutor, does not really qualify to be called a report because it is not achieving its purpose.
Right.
We have described it as just a mere writing of an essay. But unfortunately, what we want the Special Prosecutor to do is that in as much as we want to fight corruption, they must find a way of giving us detailed reports which will ensure that there's transparency in the workings that they do.
Mr. Wilson, I appreciate that you could speak to us. That's Emmanuel Wilson. He's a chief crusader of the Crusaders Against Corruption there. We're moving on to other matters, but you're listening to the news here on 3FM 92.7. And the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, he's admitted the domestic debt exchange program was a difficult experience, but the country needed to bite the bullet in order to ensure a speedy economic recovery. He notes that with the approval of the IMF deal and the disbursement of the first tranche, the Ghanaian economy has begun to stabilize. He was speaking at an event to observe America's Independence Day here in the capital, Accra.
The media will recognize that it's been quite a dramatic change in where we are. During that period in which we did a double take to go to the fund, we got the SLA in record time. We got the fund approval in record time. We got 3 times our quota, which is unprecedented, 3 billion. We also were able to front load it so that we may get 1.2 billion this year, which is good. And then within 3 days of the approval also, it was disbursed for us. And then inflation must keep it down from 54 to where we are. I think the currency is a little bit more stable. Treasury bill rates have moved from 35 to maybe 20-something%. The domestic debt exchange program was very difficult for us as a country. But I think, the need to do it is being proven. So you can see some stability, and we are grateful for that.
As Finance Minister Ken Ofori, unfortunately, there was a lot of music in that background, making it a bit difficult to hear exactly what he's been saying. We're moving on to politics now because, as we announced and told you about, Alan Tremantin is beginning a debate of delegates, 4 delegates, I should say, in the Greater Accra region as he ramps up campaign activities. And my colleague Armstrong Gold Alogbe has been where the campaign team is joining us on the telephone line with a bit more. So Armstrong, it's the second day of Alan's Accra tour where we've seen Michael Quaid Jr. and Lydia Sairam Al-Hassan, MP for Ayawaso West, joining. Exactly what's been happening and what has the discussion been about?
Well, now today, as you said, the second day, Alan seems to be enjoying some support from members of parliament. Yesterday, we saw others. Today, we are seeing new faces where today one man from the northern region has spoken that, well, it has been said about 120 MPs are following Baumia, but that is not true. And he can say on authority as member of parliament that, well, as it stands right now, there are more than 60% of MPs that are following Alan, and that Ghanaians or the delegates should not be frightened by that assertion in the public. And he has been speaking at the second day of the Alan campaign tour.
With John Alan, you will win the elections. So we will go ahead to campaign for somebody that you will bring and will follow you people. MPs tell us this. And let me tell you, don't be threatened, don't be alarmed, don't be scared about any figures people are throwing out there. Or this number of MPs, 118 MPs support a particular candidate, 120. It is not true. I repeat, it is not true. Individuals can talk about their support, but you can't talk about where others belong. I know what I'm talking about, and at the appropriate time, we will talk about it. Jome Kwabenya, fortunately, I live with you. I'm a constituent. In fact, I live at Pillar 2. So I am your MP, your deputy MP. If there are issues, please, that you think you are far away from your MP, I am at Ohine down there. Come around, we will talk. We see how we can resolve the issues so that we move together into this election and we strike it once that all of us will benefit.
That's the MP for Lambushi, Bright Yelville Baligi, speaking there. Let's go to the party's Kokomlemle offices where it's day 3 of vetting. Noble Crosby Annan has got all of the details. Crosby, who's been there today?
Eric, thanks for having me. So far we've seen Dr. Kofi Konadu-Apreku arrive, and he has gone through the vetting process successfully on day 3 of the MPP's vetting of the flag bearer aspirant. So if you like, Dr. Apreku is the 7th person to be vetted by the party. When he arrived at around 9 a.m., he made his leave out of the vetting committee's office closely after about 2 hours. But the thing is, the aspirants, we understand, have been told not to engage with the media. Dr. Konadu-Apreku refused to speak with the media, and according to his campaign spokesperson and personal assistant, that is the directive that is coming from the vetting committee, that the media must not be spoken to after the vetting. That is what has happened with Kofi Konadu-Apreku. At the moment, as we speak, we have another aspirant, the former Agri Minister, taking his turn to face the vetting committee, Dr. Utofri Akuto. He has arrived, and he's already taken his turn to face the vetting committee. When he comes out of the committee, whatever transpired, he agrees to speak with us, contrary to the directive from the vetting committee. Will bring you the details. We also expect to have Joe Gatti also here, who will be the 9th person to take his turn to face the vetting committee of the MPP. We understand he's supposed to arrive at about 2 p.m. today, and when he comes, we'll let listeners know, Eric.
Right there, Noel Crosby and my colleague are the Kokomlemle officers of the governing New Patriotic Party. And just by way of news on the anti-LGBT bill because of its very controversial nature. The committee report on the bill has been tabled and the processes has begun in Parliament. But yesterday there was some unfortunate news where a building collapsed, killing one person and injuring 4 others. My colleague Gordon Asiliva was there and reports.
An unfortunate incident happened here on Tuesday, July 4, after a heavy downpour which lasted for about 2 hours. According to eyewitnesses, after the rain, the owner of this health facility was seated under the story building structure together with 4 other people. They heard a sudden noise and they rushed here, and when they got here, this particular building had collapsed and all the 5 people who were seated beneath it were struggling under the debris. It took the team from the Ghana National Fire Service and the Ghana Police Service hours to get here and also hours to rescue them. Unfortunately, the owner of the facility who was stuck was brought out and unfortunately pronounced dead on the spot. But the remaining 4 people who were on the other side of the building were brought out, and fortunately they are alive and they have been rushed into the hospital. Residents here are shocked about the incident that happened and they are hoping that those who have been rushed into the hospital will come out stronger.
We started digging through the debris to find them as soon as possible.
My colleague Gordon Asiliba with that report, an eyewitness account, ending the news here on 3FM 92.7. As always, a lot more news if you log on to 3news.com. Nanekia Mensa Brampa, she's ready and on standby with the very latest from the world of business.
A very good afternoon to you, and thank you for joining us on Business Daily. Coming up this afternoon, economist Professor Lord Mensah encourages bank holders to sacrifice their dividends following the Bank of Ghana's directive for non-payment of dividends due to the effects of DDEP. Also, economist and director of ISA, Professor Peter Korte, expresses worry over government's continuous borrowing to finance the purchasing of cocoa. We have the details of this and more in the next 10 minutes. Please stay. Thank you for your time. My name is Nana Ikuya Mensah Brampa. Let's get to the detail. As an economist and director of ISA, Professor Peter Korte has expressed worry over government's continuous borrowing to finance the purchasing of cocoa. The Cocoa Syndicated Loan, Cocoa Board signed a $1.13 billion syndicated loan with international banks to finance purchases for the upcoming season. But according to Professor Korte, there's a need to set up a fund to hold a fraction of the proceeds that are accrued from the beans purchases annually.
Most often, when we appoint CEOs to some of these state-owned enterprises, I'm not very much clear whether they are clear targets that they are meeting. So they've been running losses, and you can be assured that sometimes even the number of employees that they have on their payroll is more than what they need. So there are several things, so there are a lot of inefficiencies within the system, and that is what is hurting the cocoa sector. I often wonder why, for how many years that we have been producing and exporting cocoa, we always have to go and borrow to finance the purchase of cocoa. If it was my business, I would set up a fund. Every year, you put something in it, every year. After 10, whatever, 15 years, you have enough buffer to finance the purchase of cocoa. But every year, consistently, cocoa syndicated loan, then go and borrow. And borrowing doesn't come cheap. It comes with a cost. You have to pay interest of 40%. So you get 100 cedis, 40% goes to the lender. You are left with 60%. Then know you are working for somebody.
And that was Director at ISA, Professor Peter Korte there. Some banks have indicated their preparedness for a second round of the Domestic Debt Exchange Program. Managing Director of Societe Generale Ghana, Hakeem Uzani, says the bank does not expect to be impacted by the second round of government's DDEP. He was speaking on the facts behind the figures organized by the Ghana Stock Exchange in Accra.
Our ratios are globally good. The capital adequacy ratio, we finished 2022 at around 16%. We are above the requirement, so we are comfortable. We work towards maintaining this level of comfort, and whatever I would say that we always have to comply with the regulation, and if there is tomorrow a need to recapitalize, we will do it, but at this stage there is no indicator.
Mr. Uzani further believes the bank is not exposed to the US dollar, local bonds and cocoa bills that were recently agreed to be restructured by government.
Our ratios are globally good. The capital adequacy ratio, we finished 2022 at around 16%. We are above the requirement, so we are comfortable. We work towards maintaining this level of comfort, and whatever I would say that we always have to comply with the regulation, and if there is tomorrow a need to recapitalize, we will do it, but at this stage there is no indicator.
Right, so that was an earlier reaction to Mr. Uzani, but we'll pick the other one on the Bank of Ghana.
We had an exposure of 133 million Ghana cedis, and we have done the necessary in terms of determining the fair value and the provisioning for that, which has been already integrated in the financials of 2022. For the new one, we don't have at this stage any further exposure linked to the second DDP initiative, so we don't expect any further impact on our activity.
That was the Managing Director of Societe Generale Ghana, Hakeem Uzani, there, saying that the bank is not expecting to be impacted by the second round of the DDEP. Away from that, economist at the University of Ghana Business School, Professor Lord Mensah, says bank shareholders should willingly sacrifice their dividends so their banks can survive the difficult times. After government's domestic debt exchange program, banks suffered huge losses as investments were concentrated in bonds. As part of the DDEP program, the Bank of Ghana issued a directive for non-payment of dividends to shareholders of banks, and this, some rural banks have complained, is having dire impact on their survival due to the reluctance of shareholders to reinvest.
For me, it's a sacrifice that they must make for now, and then looking at long term, they're going to benefit on that. So I would say that, be it local bank or foreign bank, they should go ahead. It's a form of recapitalization. And if you recapitalize the bank using your own dividend, and it turns out that the bank becomes stable and the trust, build up, you start recording streams of profit, which will go in your own, which will be good for the shareholders in the long term. So for me, they should be able to sacrifice.
And you heard Professor Lord Mensah of the University of Ghana Business School there. Meanwhile, some shareholders of rural banks in the country have expressed dissatisfaction at that directive from the Bank of Ghana. And the move is also aimed at building the capital adequacy ratio, according to the Bank of Ghana, of those other banks and the specialized deposit taking institution. So those are some reactions from the rural banks. They think that a directive from the Bank of Ghana for them to suspend payment of dividends has made their investors and shareholders reluctant to invest in the sector. And just before we go, Chief Operations Officer at Rana Motors, Kasim Odemat, has revealed plans to train more Ghanaians in local assembling of automobile equipment. According to him, this has become necessary to increase local content participation, and this will be fulfilled after the automobile policy is passed.
Now we will be able to reach to the 100%, Ghanaians. Of course, it's going to be always 95% or 96%, but we will need some expert to be with us, training us to build capacity until we reach to the complete knockdown, which we believe we can achieve if the policy gets fully implemented and the components, automotive components manufacturing policy also comes out in the near future. We believe if these things happen, definitely once we reach to the capacity and to the desired capacity, we can definitely reach to 100% local content when it comes to the employees and the staff of Rana Motors.
And you heard the Chief Operations Officer at Rana Motors, Kasim Odimat, there, ending it for Business Daily on 3FM 92.7. Remember, when you log on to 3news.com, we have more business news updates. My name is Nana Ikea Mensah Brampa. Black Rasta is back again. Good afternoon.